Well, thank you, Pastor. Thank you guys for having me. Look, this place is awesome. I've driven by here a lot of times, but every time I come to the door, it's locked. But this is fantastic facility. Honored to be here. So I'm a part of the Met Church. I'm not on staff there. I was. We'll talk about that here in a minute. My wife is actually the worship leader there. She's a real big deal. It is just an honor to be with you. We're going to look at a weird story in the Bible this morning. It's a strange one. It's just a few verses. It's way in the front. Genesis. And let me set up what's going on here. There was this deal called the flood. Not Harvey. I'll talk about that later too. But the original Harvey. The very first one, you guys remember. God looks at what he's created. It's a big mess, and he's like, okay, we need to do over. So he etch-a-sketched it. He shook it up. There was this big flood. He gets this guy, Noah, and his family to build this boat that they've now put in Branson or somewhere up there, I think. And they get on the boat, and they ride out the flood. It's a complete do-over. And they get off the boat, and they start meandering. They just start over. So this story is after the do-over. And right after the flood story in Genesis, it starts giving us these genealogies, these list of names. If you're old school, you read that KJV, there's a lot of begats. So-and-so begat so-and-so, and then these guys begat so-and-so. And it's just long list of begats. Now, my mama made me read the Bible every year. Not once, but read the Bible every year. And I got real excited every time my Bible reading for the day were the genealogies, because I know I wasn't going to read all of them because I couldn't pronounce the names. So I just got to skim those weeks, got done early, got right back to cartoons. And so we got this long genealogy, like in Genesis 10. And then there's these few verses in Genesis 11. And then it goes right back into some names. So it's just this story packed in the middle of all these names that we can't pronounce, that we don't name our kids anymore. And I want to look at that story this morning. And it's a story that we in Sunday school in VBS, we've titled it The Tower of Babel. If you've been around church a while, you've definitely put this one up on the flannel graph. Any flannel graph people? Yeah, well, you know what I'm talking about. Like that magic board in VBS, it just looks like normal board, but then things magically stick to it. And we would have the tower, we would have the people, we would have God, and we would tell the kids this bizarre little story. But I think when we revisit it later in life and we unpack it a little bit, this strange little story in this peculiar place in the Bible has a lot to teach us. I think it's very relevant in Houston, Texas in 2022. So if you got your Bible or you got your little Bible app or if you got it memorized, we're going to be in Genesis chapter 11. Now you're going to notice if you looked up here, my Bible is tearing apart. That's how spiritual I am. No, I dropped it out of my car. Genesis chapter 11. You ready? Everybody got it? Everybody got it? I think we're going to put it on the screen if you don't got it, so it's fine. Here we go. Chapter 1 says this. At one time, all the people of the world spoke the same language and used the same words. As the people migrated to the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylonia and settled there. They began saying to each other, let's make bricks and harden them with fire, because in this region bricks were used instead of stone and tar was used for mortar. Then they said, come, let's build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches into the sky, and this will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world. Let's stop there. Okay, this is half of the story. Now remember what's happened. Flood, people, a bunch of begats. And now the population has grown back, and they have found themselves wandering around for a minute. There's a lot of begats before we get to this story, which means when the boat finally hit land and they took off, and Noah and his crew began to remultiply, they began to scatter. It had been many, 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 many years of doing this. And they wandered upon what looked like to be a pretty good piece of property. And somebody in the group said, hey, got an idea. Let's just stop wandering around. It's nice here. There's resources. Let's just build us a city. Let's just park it for a minute. In fact, we won't just build us a city, but right in the middle of the city, we're going to build this huge tower. And it's going to go so high, it's going to go all the way up to heaven. And we're going to be a big deal. Now, so what's the problem with that? Right? Here's the problem with that. Back in Genesis 9, right after the boat hits, God gave some pretty clear directions to Noah and his family. It says this, it says, then God blessed Noah and his sons and told them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So there was a very clear directive. Have babies, go everywhere. That was it. Like those were the rules. Have some babies, go everywhere. And according to Genesis 10, they've been having lots of babies. They had that down. They were in for it. They liked it. Having babies. And up until this point, they were doing the second part. They were going everywhere. That's what they were doing. They were doing exactly what God wanted them to do. Have babies, go everywhere. Until this point. And that's when they got tired of doing what they were supposed to be doing. And they decided amongst themselves, they called a Wednesday night business meeting. They all got together. They had a vote. And they decided what we're going to do is just stay here. We're done with all the camping. Right? Because that's what they would do. They would carry tents with them. They would go to some place for a minute. They would set up their tents. They'd stay there for a little while, use the resources, and then they would keep scattering. That's what they were doing. That's what they were supposed to be doing. And they got tired of it. They got tired of camping, and I get it. I'm not a camper. I'm a lover of AC. Okay, I'll admit that in front of all of you. I've got no shame in that. The outside, it's hot. I don't think we're supposed to be there, to be real honest with you. And I certainly don't like camping. Like, I don't own a tent. Like, you can come to my garage today, 11622 Idlebrook. You can come, you can look through the whole garage. You're not going to find a tent, because that is not what we do in our house. My wife is certainly not going to be in a tent. We did it one time. One time. We were going to be adventurous. We borrowed a tent. We set that sucker up, and by the time it was set up, we're in a fight. We're yelling at each other, and it's hard to like storm out in a tent with the zipper. I just sat in the truck. You know why? It's where the AC lives. So I get it. Like, I understand why this big, large group of people would have just said, we are done with that. Let's build a real town, some real houses with some bricks. Because they had to engineer. They didn't even have rocks where they were. So they thought it was a big enough deal to where they were even willing to make their own building materials. And they start the build. Because that's going to make them safe. Right? You put a big wall up, you get a big tower, everything's going to be safe. It's going to make them famous. And so then the first question that I've got this morning is, as believers, as those of us who claim to follow Jesus, are we pursuing safety? Are we pursuing security in our lives? Like, is that our main, when we wake up in the morning, we start thinking about our day, are we thinking about continuing to be safe and secure? And let's just build up our wall. Let's build up our town. Let's build up our tower. And I'm going to just, I sway way being too transparent. Like, normally I get off stage and my wife goes, really? You told him that? And I go, did I? Did I say it? I don't remember. The Lord was leading me. But I love to be safe and secure. I love to know I've got enough money. I love to know that my bills are paid. I love to know that my kids are in a good school. I love to know that my car's going to run. I like my church to be nice. I like to know that our church everything is cool. Everything's modern. Facility's awesome. Find a lot of security in that. But that wasn't what God was asking these people to do. And I'm not real sure it's what God's asking me to do or you to do. And it seems like when we see somebody that's really being obedient to God, we look at people like that and go, you are out of your mind nuts. We got a guy at the Met, on staff at the Met. His name's Brad. A little over a year ago, I was in Brad's backyard. We were hanging out, just talking about life, about how manly we were. And Brad goes, hey, man, my wife and I have been thinking about moving to Germany. I said, what are you talking about? He said, we got this relationship with these churches over there that we kind of have partnered with, and we've been thinking about going over there. And I said, yeah, going over there for like a couple weeks, do a little short-term mission trip, take some pictures, see some stuff, talk about Jesus a little bit, take some more pictures. Yeah, I get it. I'll go with you. He's like, no, like moving. Like we're going to move our family. And I said, for how long? He goes, at least a year. I said, Brad, you're not making a lot of sense. I don't know if you've been around like gasoline. I don't know what's causing this. I said, man, you got a wife. You've got a teenage girl, which is the most volatile creature on the planet. A teenage girl. You're just going to uproot her and take her to a country where she can't understand anything that's being said. You don't even know what side of the road you're supposed to drive on. And then you got a kid, like a 5-year-old. This kid's named Miles. And this guy's a wild man. I'm like, Brad, I don't want to take Miles to like Walmart. There's no way I'm taking him to Germany. And he goes, no, dude, I think we're doing it. And they did it. They sold their house. They sold all their stuff. They got rid of anything they didn't need. And Brad and Kelly and the kids spent the last year living in a foreign country, learning a new language during very formative years of their children. And he spent the whole year over there just helping local churches know what it looks like to become disciples of Jesus. Why? Because he believed with all of his heart that that's what God was asking him to do. No matter how unsafe it was, no matter if it made no sense to family and friends, he wasn't worried about pursuing security. These guys here, this is God's people right here, were worried about their pursuit of being safe, their pursuit of security, and then they were also really wanting to be significant. Right? Remember what it says? It says, watch this. They said in verse 4, come, let's build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches into the sky. This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world. Let's build a tower, which is a good building project. Right? That's a good structure to have as a tower. Let's build a big tower. That way anybody that happens upon us is going to see the tower from a long way away, and we're not going to have any trouble. Once again, back to security. We're not going to have any trouble. And they're going to think that we're a big deal. Right? People are going to drive past our town, and they're going to be like, we're not messing with these folks. They know what they're doing. They built this big tower. We got nothing to see here. Let's just go the long way around. And some versions say that they wanted to build it to the heavens. There's a lot of theological debate on what that part meant. Did they want to be God themselves? Whatever. But what the text says is that they wanted to build this tower so that they would be known, so that they would be famous, so that they could go to bed at night feeling like they were somebody important. And I get it. Like, if you spend about 9 minutes around me, you're going to go, what is wrong with this guy? Because I'm always talking about wanting to be famous. Always. Like, I just want to be a big deal. I'm a stand-up comic. I do comedy all over Houston. And I watch Netflix specials. I watch comedians on Netflix, and I just go, why is this guy on TV? This guy doesn't need to be on TV. I need to be on TV. Do these people not know who I am? Like, I do. I've always wanted to be famous. I've always wanted to be a big deal. And so I look at these guys, and I go, yeah, I get it. I don't want to get attacked by bears, and I want to be famous. I'm with you guys. Like, I would have started the project. It would have been me. You guys remember Buzz Aldrin? Remember that guy? Astronaut. He did some pretty significant things, right? It's like the first guy on the moon. Like, that's a pretty significant feat. I would say it's the most significant thing that any human being has done in the history of human beings besides Jesus. It's quite the accomplishment. He rode in a spaceship across space and got out of the spaceship and walked around on the moon. Kind of a big deal. As soon as he got back from doing that, of course, there's press. They want to know everything. They want to know, how did this go? What did you experience? What was it like? Was this just amazing? Here's the term he used to describe what he felt while he was standing on the moon. Magnificent desolation. He said it was magnificent. What I was seeing was incredible. But I was extremely lonely feeling. In fact, he went on to title his book Magnificent Desolation. And if you dig into Buzz Aldrin's life after the moon landing, it's a pretty ugly picture. He became a raging alcoholic. He had several marriages, several wives over a short period of time. In fact, things got so bad for Buzz Aldrin that at one point he started selling cars. Now, if you're a car salesman, okay, this is not me hating on your career. Some of you guys are amazing. I tried it one time for 4 weeks. I did. 2 years ago, I started working selling cars. Tom Peacock Nissan. I was going to be the best car salesman ever. 4 weeks, sold 3 cars. 2 of the 3 to people I knew. When I quit, I owed them money. Like, they had forwarded me money, and I had to give money back. That's how bad I was. But Buzz Aldrin, the first guy ever to walk on the moon, is walking around in parking lots going, hey, what do you think about the Nova? Extremely suicidal. Why? Because when we're not pursuing God and we're just trying to pursue some sort of significance, some sort of feeling like we're somebody, it always ends up empty. It's like building a tower to nowhere. And that's what these guys were doing. They were building a tower to nowhere. So then God jumps into the story. Verse 5, it says this. It says, but the Lord came down to look at the city and to the tower that the people were building. Look, he said, the people are united. They all speak the same language. And after this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Come, let's go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other. And that way the Lord scattered them all over the world, and they stopped building the city. This is why the city was called Babel, because that's where the Lord confused the people with different languages. And in this way, he scattered them all over the world. God understands what we're capable of when we're pursuing our own things. Right? He had already wiped out the whole deal. He already saw what his creations were capable of when they were just pursuing what they wanted, when they were pursuing things like security and safety and significance. And so he has to intervene. And I think this is a great part of the story. Because the picture that it's painting is that God is up in this perfect heaven, and he's just kind of checking out how things are going on. And he looks down and he's like, "Oh, are you serious? Are we doing this again? Is this what you guys are going to do? You gonna build you a big tower? Is that what we're doing here?" And in all of his omniscient, all-knowing, all-presentness, he decides to pay them a personal visit. Those of you that work in corporate America, you understand what that feels like when the guy from corporate comes, like the head honcho. You get that email, like, "Hey, big boss is coming." Everybody starts doing real good. Everybody starts acting like they've been doing real good, even though they ain't. They just been sitting around looking at memes on their phones all day long. Well, God pays them a visit. He didn't send out an email. He just rolls up. He just says, "Hey, let's just go down there and pay a visit." And what I like in this passage is he says, "Let us go down there." It says a little nod to the Trinity, right? A little nod to, like, it's not just him, like there's more going on there we're going to find out about later. And he says, "Let's go down and just take a look." And what he says is this. He says, "The people are united. They all speak the same language. After this," he says, "nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them to do." This wasn't God having an insecure moment, by the way. This wasn't God going, "Oh no, they're building a tower all the way up to here. What are we going to do?" He wasn't insecure in this moment. He had just already seen what we're capable of. And look, read a history book or watch the local news right now, and you can see what we as humanity are capable of. Terrible things. I mean, the human species has done incredibly awful things to each other because we're chasing power and significance and safety. So he comes up with a plan. He says, "Let's go down there and confuse them so that they can't understand each other, so that they can't think for any more that they're just going to be able to take over the whole deal and do whatever they want to do." And that's what God does. Oftentimes, what he will do is he will insert him into situations to completely disrupt our plans. Why? Because he's got something better or different for us. It's throughout the whole Bible. It's throughout the whole Bible. Remember a guy named Paul? Y'all probably talk about him around here. Paul used to be named Saul. He was named Saul back when he was up to no good. He was just going around wrecking shop for anybody that even mentioned the name of Jesus. He was just part of the crew that would round people up and throw them in jail and have them murdered, whatever he needed to do to get rid of these people. And then Jesus is like, "Nope, got to intervene." Shows up, blinds the dude for a few days, and he says, "Hey man, I got something different for you. I got something more significant for you." Woman at the well comes up. Jesus says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And she said, "I just came here to get a drink of water." And he was like, "Hey, how about I give you something that you're never going to be thirsty again?" That's how Jesus intervenes in our lives sometimes. There were these friends that had a buddy that couldn't walk. He's paralyzed. And they'd heard that Jesus was at this house one afternoon. And so they just decided they were going to take him, put him right in front of Jesus. In fact, they got there, and the Bible says they couldn't get in because it's so crowded, because that's how Jesus was. Every time Jesus showed up, it's a huge crowd. So they jumped up on this dude's roof. I'm sure the same thing you and I would do. They just jumped up on a stranger's roof and cut a big hole out of his roof and dropped their friend down in the living room. Yeah, now look, I'm from Arkansas. I got friends that would do that in a second. Like they would never even hesitate. And Jesus does something very interesting in that story. He intervenes in a way that they weren't expecting. They just wanted their friend to be healed. One, so that they would not have to tote him back home after they'd already brought him there. But two, it's their buddy, and they heard this guy Jesus can do things like this. And Jesus, the first thing he says is, because of your faith, your sins are forgiven. Because that's what God does. He intervenes. He takes our intentions and our reasons and our purposes, and he just intervenes because he has something else for us. Now, I get this. This weekend is the 5-year anniversary of Harvey. Okay? I know that because I had a significant, crazy experience through Harvey. And I also know that this weekend is the weekend because my Facebook told me it. It showed me all the pictures and all the videos from this weekend. And we woke up, like probably some of you, like a whole lot of people in this city, and there was water all in our house, a couple feet. A boat had to come to our front door. Actually, the nose of the boat was in our house, and we had to grab a chair and climb up. And my family, I've got 3 kids and a dog, and my wife, and we all jumped in that boat, and we went out of our neighborhood in a boat. And I videoed the whole thing. I was running commentary on the video at that point. It was highly entertaining to me. I thought, this is absolutely amazing. We're riding in a boat in our neighborhood. It was actually kind of exciting for about 8 minutes. A few days later, we finally got back home, and we got to see what had been done, and it was just devastating. I just walked in the living room. I had just redone our floors and the whole bottom floor of our house. We had put in that, what they call floating laminate, and it did. All over the house, floated all around the house. And I can just remember standing there in the living room that day, just looking around going, how are we going to get through this? I have flood insurance. I was a pastor at the time. I didn't have what they call a savings account. We just had whatever was in the checking account at the time, and something happened over the next several weeks as we began to try to put the house back together. I just kind of snapped. I was the teaching pastor at the time at the Met. We had 2 campuses, which meant every week I was standing on a stage just like this in front of thousands of people and doing exactly what I'm doing right now. That's what I was doing at the time, and I completely checked out. Checked out. Like I stopped going into work completely. We had some friends who let us stay in their house out in Tomball, but I just stayed at our house every night by myself upstairs in one of my kids' twin-size bed, and I would work on the house till I couldn't stay awake anymore, and then I'd wake up the next morning and I'd do it again. I would check the schedule to see when I was going to preach, and I would roll in on Sunday mornings and walk up on the stage and act like nothing was happening. Did this for weeks and weeks. And I was just completely falling apart. And they finally brought me in. They were like, hey, man, what's up? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm good. Just working on my house. It's fine. No big deal. We're definitely not doing that floor anymore. We're going to do something different next time. Something waterproof. I'll tell you that. They're like, no, man, something's weird. Like we can tell it when you're preaching. And I remember they brought my wife and I both in, and this was on a Friday. Our offices are closed on a Friday. So I don't know if you've ever been brought into a meeting with the bosses on a day that your building's not even open. But that's what day I got called in. And they said, look, man, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take you off the stage. You need to start getting some help. You and Ashley need to get some help, because Ashley and I, during that couple of months there, had just gotten to where we didn't even hardly look at each other. They sent us away for some counseling. Came back, kept doing counseling. Here's how bad I was. I'll explain to you how bad I was. Oh, man, I was a mess. We went to this 6-day counseling deal over in Austin. It was 6 days. It was 10 hours a day. It's a year's worth of counseling that they put in 6 days. It was magical. For somebody that was a pastor that didn't need counseling, because if you're a pastor, you don't need counseling, because we're the one doing the counseling. That's the rule. There was about, at that stage, there would have been 43 years worth of trauma that I'd never dealt with. We sat down with the pre-counselor, the guy that was just asking the pre-session stuff before we even got to the real thing. And 10 minutes in, this guy looked at me. He goes, "You ever seen a counselor?" And I said, "That's what we're doing. You're a counselor. I'm seeing you. That's what we're doing here, right?" He goes, "No, have you ever seen a counselor?" I said, "Just like by myself?" I was like, no, dude, I'm good. He said, "As soon as your session's over, I'm going to set you up with a counselor in Houston." So we went to lunch. I said, "Babe, did you see what just happened?" She was like, "That was an amazing experience." I was like, "From where you were sitting, he didn't even talk to you. You just got a free coffee." I said, "Babe, I just got referred the first 10 minutes by one counselor who knew he could not do anything for me to a better counselor. That's what just happened." So that began the process of several years of healing for me. I was eventually released from my duties at the Met. That's the way I like to say it. I began to have to get weird jobs. If you know Jason Renfro, he was an insurance adjuster. He hooked me up with an insurance adjusting job during some hurricanes, which I knew nothing about. I didn't know the parts of houses or how to adjust them in an insurance manner, but I went for it. I worked at a place for 18 months called the Nut Place. I don't know how low you've ever gotten in your life, but I worked in a warehouse that distributed nuts and bolts. That's what I did for 18 months. I counted nuts and bolts by fives for 18 months. Remember, I sold cars. Remember that little ordeal? 4 weeks of my life. And I can remember so often just in tears through that transition, just thinking I was being punished for something, and I didn't even really know what. I hadn't stolen money from anyone. There had been no moral failure in my marriage. I had no police record. And then even at one point during all of those weird jobs, we finally decided, I think maybe I'm good enough to where let's get back into church. Ashley was like a part-time worship leader at our church at the point she was doing our student worship. I'd almost stopped going to church. It was just too weird. But we said, let's just reset. Let's restart. Let's make a big move. So we decided we're moving. We're gone. We're going to the West Coast. Both my boys are skateboarders. My 16-year-old's a sponsored skater. He gets free Converse for life. So that's where the action is. Let's just try to get in a church out there and just reboot, just start over. And so over a 1.5-year period where I was climbing on roofs, putting nuts and bolts in boxes, selling cars, for a 1.5 years, I interviewed with 17 different churches in California, and was told no 17 times. And I said, Ashley, what have I done where God is punishing me? And she said, babe, maybe he's not punishing you. Maybe he's just pursuing you. Maybe all this stuff is him trying to get your attention, and for whatever reason, you're just resisting it. And as we learned in that 6 days of counseling, she's right. She's always right. That became clear in the 6 days. And she was right. Because, see, even in the midst of all of that, I was still pursuing the stuff. I knew if we went to California and I got hooked up and I was a teaching pastor in a big church out on the West Coast, to be real honest with you, that was going to make me look really cool. I was going to be back. I was going to be the kid from Arkansas that's living in San Diego, living that whole deal. And so God intervenes. He did here. And he did something pretty significant here. Here's what he does. He doesn't destroy the city. He doesn't destroy the tower in this story. He just messes with them. That's all he does. He just kind of messes with them. He's like, this is going to be good. Y'all gather around. Everybody watch this deal. And they're all talking in the same language. They're all speaking the same language. That makes it way easier for them to accomplish whatever they want to accomplish. And then in a second, they couldn't understand each other, it says. Now, I don't know the specifics on that, but I can just imagine it's complete chaos. And then this is what it says. It says, in that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world. They stopped building the city. That's why the city was called Babel, because that is where the Lord confused the people with different languages. Watch. And in this way, he scattered them all over the world. Which, remember, was the original idea. God was like, if you're not going to get there the way I told you to do it, I'm just going to get in the middle of it. Because I've got something else for you. And so I had to get to a point, and look, all of us in here have to get to a point to where we have to be willing to be pursued by him and be willing to have the intervention and go, what is it? What do you have for me? Because the very next chapter, remember, names, begats, Tower of Babel, begats. At the end of the begats, we're introduced to a guy named Abram. And it says in verse 12, or chapter 12, verse 1, watch this. It said, the Lord had said to Abram, leave your native country, your relatives, your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. Watch what he does. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make you famous. You'll be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. And all the families on earth will be blessed through you. So Abram departed as the Lord had instructed. So out of all of this chaos, the people are finally scattered, and there's more people being born. And then this guy comes on the scene, and his name is Abram. And the Lord says to him, I need you to do something specific. I just need you to do it. And if you will do that, incredible things are going to happen. You're going to be blessed. Your family's going to be blessed. Everybody around you is going to be blessed. I will make you famous. And everyone will be blessed if you pursue obedience. And we know the story. Hey, check this out. We're sitting here because it says, then Abram went and did just as the Lord had instructed. We're sitting here. We're here right now. This building is here right now, in this place, on this street, for this time. Because Abram said, okay, sounds scary. Doesn't sound real safe. Don't know how we're going to pull this off, but if you need me to do this, then Lord, then this is what I'm going to do. So a year ago tomorrow, I started a new job. And it's a crazy job. It's not a job I ever thought I would be in, but I am a pastor for a place called Jake's Finer Foods. We're a food distributor to restaurants. Everywhere you eat, we bring them your food. Restaurants, grocery stores, hospitals, schools. And check this out. I'm their pastor. That is bonkers. I'm guessing if you don't work here, your job doesn't have a pastor. Just guessing. When I saw the ad on Indeed, I called the guy. I actually knew the guy that was the CEO. I hadn't talked to him in years, and I was like, "Are you making junk up? Like, what are you guys doing?" He's like, "No, this is God's company. We want somebody to come in here and take care of our people. We want somebody to reach out to our community." I said, "I'm your guy." He goes, "Well, we've been doing this search for like 6-7 months. We've already narrowed it down to 2 people." I said, "But you've not narrowed it down to 1 person." And he goes, "You're right." And I said, "I'm in." He goes, "Okay, I'm going to give you 24 hours to turn in all your stuff." I said, "I'm going to do it in 2. Bang, send. That was early last summer. Last year on August 28th, I started as the director of ministry for Jake's Finer Foods. And I don't say any of that to say, "Hey, look at me, I'm a big deal." Okay? Because it's not a big platform. I'm going to be honest with you. I take care of people that sell groceries. I'm honored to be a part of it. I'm honored to still get to do this. I'm honored to finally be back on the stage at the Met, not on the staff. I don't know. They don't have enough money. I'm not doing that anymore. But I'm honored to do that. It's an amazing place where my wife is the worship leader. But through this meandering that I went on of disobedience, of searching for things that I shouldn't be searching for, God has finally pursued me and patiently pursued me to where I finally said, "Okay, whatever you need me to do." And here's the interesting part of that job. I'm rarely, if ever, standing on a platform in front of all of those people and doing this little thing that I do, which is by far what I'm doing right now, this is when I'm most confident and most comfortable. Like the second I walk off the stage, I start getting real weird, real awkward. Just don't know what to do. And that's what I have to do every day. Is I just meet with people, I counsel people, I go out on trucks with drivers, and I just love on people, and I pastor people, and I've always told people I'm not much of a pastor, I'm more of a teacher. And God has finally said, maybe you are a pastor, and I may let you teach every now and then. Maybe that's the new setup. And I go, okay, it's your plan. It's what we're going to do. So I wonder this morning, have you been searching for the wrong stuff? It may not even be anything in this story. It may not be security or safety or significance. It may just be, name the thing that we're searching for. Have you been looking and searching? And I'm going to tell you, and maybe you're in this state of chaos. I don't know where anybody in this room is. I know a couple of people in the room. But maybe life is chaotic right now. Maybe it seems like stuff is spinning. Maybe it seems like it's never going to get back to normal. And maybe God's just pursuing you to be obedient where He wants you, how He wants to do it. Maybe you're not being punished. Maybe you're just being pursued. And I can tell you, as someone on the other side of it at this point, that the obedience piece brings a whole lot of peace. Like being willing to just be open to what He wants and how He wants to do it has brought a lot of peace back into our home that's been a pretty unpeaceful situation for the last 5 years. It's brought a joy back in our home where there's not been a whole lot of joy over a lot of these 5 years. So I just want to pray for you. I know I went long, but you get to do that when you're the, guest guy. I know y'all typically beat all the Methodists to the restaurant. I get it. But I just want to pray for you, Pastor, for you, for this church, that this be a place that would be defined as a group of people that aren't building towers to nowhere, but a group of people that's just being obedient to what God's doing in this community. Because we need churches like this. That's what we need. It's what this community needs. A place where we can find hope and peace in the midst of the chaos. A place where we can see what God is actually moving around us. So I want to pray for you.